Do you constantly worry about your finances and feel like nothing will ever change? It might not seem like a big deal, but having the right mindset can make the world of difference. Whether you have a scarcity or an abundance mindset can greatly impact your financial situation. Join me on this latest episode of the Witty Wallet as I sit down with Sarah Edens, the founder of Sarah Edens Financial. We'll discuss why having the right mindset is crucial for achieving financial success and living a life of abundance. Don't miss out on this opportunity to gain control over your financial life. Tune in as I chat with Sarah and discover how together we can live a more healthy and wealthy life.
Take the scary out of money, especially for women, but for anyone who's scared of money. It's not, it's just something we have to deal with every day, and the more you learn, the less.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Witty Wallet. I have with me a very special guest, the founder of Sarah Edens Financial. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
No, absolutely. I knew that when we connected, I believe through Instagram, what really connected me was your money mindset, and I think we talked about this. We kind of share that similar mindset, and that's where I knew I had to have someone like you on the show and share your experience and your vision, and collaborate with you. To be honest.
Yeah, I was so happy when you reached out. That's so great.
Well, again, thank you so much again for being on the show. And, we're going to have a lot of fun. And before we get into kind of like the meats of the podcast, I always kind of like to start with a little icebreaker question. So for you, Sarah, if, you could dine with any three powerful women from history or present, can you share who would they be and why?
Yeah, so that's such a good question that I really had to think about it because there's so many people and it's just like having to pick just three. I was like, can I have more than three? That's that's challenging. But yeah, I think for me, when I think about powerhouse women who I really admire, I have to start really with my ancestors. Have a lot of different ancestry. I've got a lot of German ancestry and then also Irish and Cherokee. And what I would love to do is sit down with some of the Irish and Cherokee women in particular from my family and from
Wow.
my family tree and be able to talk to them about what their life was like because they lived through extraordinarily difficult times. My family came over on my dad's side, came over from Ireland during the Irish potato famine. And so
Oh,
they
wow.
fled the famine just to land in upstate New York just in time for the Civil War. And the Irish were one of the reasons why the North won the Civil War, obviously, because they were immigrating from Ireland. And so, I had so much family that, went through so many difficult times. And so, specifically, like to talk to the women and also to the women in my Cherokee ancestry and talk to them about what life was like and the challenges that they faced and just the extraordinary resilience that they must have had going through all the changes and all the turbulence and all the problems and trouble that the Cherokee went through. As far as I've been able to trace with my family tree so far, I haven't been able to track down anybody that was involved in the Cherokee Trail of Tears.
Oh, wow.
But just the native indigenous tribes in this country went through so much. And so just to be able to talk to them and hear their story, because I feel like a lot of that's being forgotten, just like the Cherokee language is being largely forgotten. I'm trying to learn it myself, which is really fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
Um, yeah, it's a beautiful language, beautiful culture, and just something that's being forgotten. So just to be able to sit down and hear those stories from those women would just be so special.
Oh, that's great. And I'm sure you just learning the like you said, Cherokee language and practicing it. I'm sure there's maybe just some type of just connection that it gives you again to your ancestors who you've never met, but just the simple fact
Yeah,
that you're now sharing that with them. I
yeah,
think that's great to take it upon you
yeah.
that awareness.
And I think the thing that's cool with ancestry is it's all passed down through storytelling. And so,
Yes.
I wouldn't have even known I had Cherokee ancestry, except my grandmother on my mom's side was always talking about how we were descended from Pocahontas, which I haven't been
Really?
able to actually find any proof of that. And I have looked and looked, and I could probably do some more. I'm a history major, so I'm
Okay.
really into that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I haven't actually found any direct lineage to Pocahontas herself. But yeah, just with being able to pass down those stories, and I feel like that's just and again, those stories of resilience. How do we do well in difficult times? Because we've
Yes.
certainly been through some difficult times in the past couple of years, and so I draw a lot of strength, from the stories of people who have been through harder times than mine. Because what we feel like, what we've been through since the 2020, pandemic and
Hmm.
everything that happened was really difficult. I know created a lot of financial hardship for many, many people, and all kinds of other trauma. But you look at other people that have gone through other things at other times in history, and it was worse. So it just can really help to kind of give some perspective there to our modern troubles, I guess, if you want to put it that way.
Oh, absolutely. I think I couldn't have said it any better. And speaking of COVID and everything, I believe that is when kind of the genesis, right, of Sarah Eden's Financial. I mean, could you share a little bit about your journey and really what inspired you to kind of enter into this world that you're in now?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. So I had worked in banking previously. My husband's in the military, and so we move around a lot. And I've worked a lot of different jobs in a lot of different states as a military spouse, just
Mm,
working for whoever would hire. And so I worked for a while in insurance and banking and kind of got some exposure to that industry and those industries that way. But like many people during the pandemic, I had a business that failed. I was doing relocation consulting here in Austin with a company, and people stopped moving.
oh,
And so I
yeah.
thought, you know what, while I'm sitting here and my business is failing, maybe it's a good time to go back to school. So, yeah. So I went back and got certificates in personal finance from Indiana University's Kelley School of Business, and then just started really getting into personal finance and figuring out what kind of business I wanted to build that would bring people something really special that wasn't necessarily available for
Mm,
the kind of challenges that people are going through. Because I don't know that, at least in my lifetime, we've never seen the financial challenges that people are facing today, or frankly, like the other stressors and challenges. It's not just all financial. There's just a lot of other stressors that we're facing right now. And so to be able to kind of bring not just finance, but also a value in those other areas. And so that's kind of where that started, was my business dying in 2020. So it was one of those things where, again, you look at it and you're like, oh, that was really unlucky that happened, but it's all about, what else comes out of those situations. I'm sure there's lots of
yes.
people that can relate to that happened to them.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree with you. I think you always can look at it right from two different ways, and unfortunately and fortunately, I feel with life you have to take the good and the bad. That's how you grow, and that's how
Yeah,
you learn. You can't just take the good only. The bad is something that can really change you and help you. And it sounds like
right.
it's helped you with the the closure of the business, now propelling yourself into a business that I believe you really much enjoy and are
I do.
thriving in.
Yeah, I do. I'm very happy. I'm a teacher first and foremost, and so to be able to teach finance skills to people is just it's really great. So
Oh, that's great. That's great. Now, I believe, and I think through studies, right, we learn a lot about finance and money, right, growing up, either if it's through our parents or through schooling. I mean, for you, growing up, can you share, what were some of your maybe earliest lessons about money?
yeah, that's such a good question. So I was very lucky as a child. I always had enough money. We always had enough food on the table. Money was never a worry, and so I was just very fortunate that way. And my parents were very, very frugal, and so I think that kind of
Mm,
frugality and thriftiness was something that's really stuck with me. Just growing up, and I was probably the only kid. I'm sure I was only the only 10-year-old on the block with a certificate of deposit account. Positive. My dad was just that kind of dad. He's like, "Oh, you made money babysitting. Let's put it in a CD for you
Oh,
for
that is
later."
awesome.
Yeah, so I definitely had the saving and thriftiness part down from growing up around my parents. And that was just kind of their perspective on life. And then they definitely taught me some stuff. I remember my dad sitting me down and showing me how to balance a checkbook and stuff.
Okay.
The one thing I did not know how to do, though, when I got out on my own after college was actually managing, cash flow, like when I had an income starting to come in.
Hmm.
And I had no idea how to manage credit wisely. And so
Oh,
that caused
yes.
a lot of financial stress. I think many, many people, no matter how much else they learn about money, credit cards can really just help you get into a lot of debt really, really quickly
Yes.
before you realize it. So I feel like a lot of what I teach today, I'm looking back at where I was in my early 20s and thinking about kind of the financial stress I was under as a new college graduate and then as a newlywed when we were in the Air Force and didn't have a lot of money and had a lot of expenses with the constant moving. And just thinking about, what kind of channel do I wish I'd had to watch on YouTube back when I was in
Mm,
my 20s? Not that we had YouTube in our 20s,
you're right.
but there's so many resources today where you can learn everything your parents forgot to teach you or didn't know themselves. And we're so fortunate that way. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I share the same similar history with credit card and credit card debt, especially coming out of college and with your first job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot of people really teach you about that. So it was definitely a hard responsibility, not responsibility, but lesson learned and how to be
Yeah.
more responsible when it came
Yeah.
to just managing debt and how to use it smartly.
Exactly. And it's just something that has gotten, today Americans are carrying more credit card debt than at any other time in American history.
Hmm.
So it's just today credit is really part of our culture. But I think for my parents' generation, I'm sure they had credit cards, but they didn't ever use them. It was all check and
Yes.
cash. So they probably assumed I would do the same thing when I grew up. And I was there at Macy's and Target and all these other stores. And they're like, "Would you like a store credit card?" I'm like, "Sure, sign me up." And
Exactly.
and before you know it, you have a lot of debt. So yeah.
No, exactly. Now, obviously, it sounds like you have, a lot of experience just personally, with finances and over time. I mean, for you now being, in this industry and, advocate for having a healthy wealth mindset, can you share with me, what are maybe some challenges that you think are faced, especially with women of color in today's world when it comes to finances. Eh, you know,
Yeah, that's such a good question. For women, I think in general, we can say that, they're facing a lot of really nuanced financial challenges today. I think one of them that I've seen personally is just that um, marriages don't last as long. I don't know how to say
mm,
this any
mm,
other way.
mm, hmm.
Marriages for whatever reason, and it's not bad. I don't think divorce has the stigma that it used to, but marriages just don't last as long as they used to. So I think a lot of women are finding themselves having to figure out how to manage money and maybe even provide for their kids depending on their alimony settlement.
Yeah.
Really at a point where maybe they never thought they'd have to learn how to manage money. And so I think that can really pose challenges for women that way, just with the way that our landscape of the way relationships and marriage are is just different than it used to be for our parents' generation. I know
Yes.
for my parents' generation, I would say, the men managed the money
Hmm.
and the wives, didn't. Like in general,
Right.
they just did it. They might
Yes.
not even have
Yeah.
access to the bank account.
Yes. Yeah.
Now we've got a very different landscape where you've got women who are making money and have their own careers. I think, like in general, money management is done. It's split a lot more evenly with both people in the relationship participating in money management,
Mm-hmm.
making decisions about the budgeting. everybody having access to it. So, it just depends on how families do it. But I think that's one thing I've really seen the women facing is, hitting a point where maybe they didn't have any financial skills, and all of a sudden, because of a divorce, they're having to learn how to manage money and make all these financial decisions they never thought they'd have to make. So I think that can be a challenge in that sense. And then also too, just this with retirement planning, that women live longer than men,
Yep.
and so even if your marriage lasts a long time, you may outlive your spouse, and so then again, you're there managing the money and making all those difficult decisions about finances. And so I think, I'm not saying like it's more important for women to know how to manage money than it is for men at all, because I think it's important for everyone to know how to do that. But women just sometimes find themselves where they're the only person, whether they're the sole breadwinner or they're widowed or divorced or something happened that way,
Yes.
big life change where it's all on their shoulders. And so that's one of the things I want to do with my channel, is to take a little bit of the burden off of them. That's one of my goals, is to just, provide like a safe space where they can come and learn about money in a way that's not intimidating.
Yes.
I think personal finance can be pretty intimidating for a lot of women. In particular, I get, well, for a lot of people in general, not just women, but for some reason in particular, when I mention that I'm a finance coach to women that I run into, they will say, "Oh my gosh, like better you than me. Oh my goodness, that's so overwhelming. My finances are such a black box."
Hmm. Hmm.
And so that's an interesting reaction that I've gotten more than once. And so I always find that fascinating. And so we want to take the scary out of money, especially for women, but for anyone who's scared of money. It's not, it's just something we have to deal with every day. And the more you learn, the less intimidating it gets. So,
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. I built my career over the years helping a lot of widowed and divorced women. And I share exactly kind of your sentiment, as far as the older generation grew up where the male took care of most of the finances. And what a
mhm,
lot of people don't realize is how much financial stress, mental stress this can put on someone, especially if they've not been involved in the household finances, at any point
mhm,
in that relationship. And especially
mhm.
when you go through widowhood or divorce. Fortunately, I've not had to go through either one, but I've worked with a lot of clients. And just from that experience in our conversation, I just understand the stress behind it. So I agree with you
Mhm.
100%. I think that's a big challenge that a lot of people face, but especially women face today. And just having that awareness, I think, of what you promote, right, of having the right mindset, I think is so important to first start with.
And to add to that too, there's that unfortunate saying, ladies aren't supposed to talk about money.
Yeah. uh,
And do we
yeah.
ever say this about gentlemen? Don't talk about money. It's like, no, we
Right.
don't say that. No one would ever say that.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
we have
exactly.
some kind of interesting cultural biases in the West, at least, of, ladies don't talk about money. It's like, well, if ladies don't talk about money, ladies are never going to be able to be wealthy. Like, I'm sorry. And it's just really important for women to be able to be financially independent so that if they get divorced or if they get, unfortunately experience a bereavement or something else happens, they're okay.
Yeah.
They're okay. And not just financially, with a good financial foundation and a safety net for them, but they know how to manage the money. It's not the first time they've looked at their brokerage portfolio, for
Hmm.
example, or the first time that they've had to, it's interesting depending on some, cultures and the way money's handled. Some women, may not have credit cards in their name or may not be on
Hmm.
accounts or may not be on loans. Maybe they don't have a credit history built up, so they don't have a credit score. So it just, is really interesting how I think that's changing a lot. I see a lot more women getting into finance coaching and starting to talk about this, and I find them very, very inspiring. Um, you can probably hear my kitty in the background, by the way. If your if your editing software doesn't edit this out, she gets
That's
kind
all
of
right.
like
That's what makes it
angry,
real.
and
That's
you
what
can
makes it
hear
fun.
her. Yeah, yeah. My you can hear her little kitty voice echoing up and down the hallway. So, but anyway, yeah, that's kind of a stereotype that I'm trying to smash. Is like
Awesome.
ladies do talk about money.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so with that, as far as the journey with Sarah Eden's Financial and the persona of maybe your ideal client or people that you would hope to help or want to help, can you share a little bit about kind of what that journey looks like and the people that you feel can benefit most from working with someone like you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, right now, I'm still building my student wait list, and I have new courses that we'll talk about later that I have coming up that I'm waitlisting people for.
Awesome.
And so right now, yeah, right now I'm not doing any one-to-one coaching, but I'm going to have availability coming up for that soon. Have some
Exciting.
opportunities for people to study with me. So I'm really happy to be rolling that out sometime next year. And in terms of people who are kind of coming to learn from me, when I look at all of my analytics on YouTube, what I'm seeing is women who are predominantly women. I have some men in my audience as well, but predominantly women ages 25 to about 45. And that
Okay.
is right there with my target audience of who I'm trying to reach is, and even younger. I even have younger women in their early teens. And so it's really just, reaching those people, really men and women who have kind of like this sense of, I don't know about money management. It causes me a lot of stress. I want to have that empowering sense of being able to educate myself about this topic. And so really I'm here for anyone who wants to learn
Awesome.
about money. That's my target audience, is anyone that wants to learn more. And my whole business model is helping people unlock their inner millionaire. And even if your ambition isn't to become a millionaire per se, it's really my belief that by working on finance skills and your wealth mindset, that you can become as wealthy as you want to. Everybody's kind of got a different point for what they view as, how much money they would need to feel rich,
Yes.
and what wealth would mean to them. It's different for everybody based on kind of the lifestyle they want to lead, and their family's needs, things like that. But really just, I'm here for anyone who wants to learn about finances.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. And, I think that's kind of where we complement each other a lot. And I feel teaming up with folks like you who are in the realm of educating people about money is
Hmm.
so important because oftentimes, as a financial advisor, I do educate people about money, but I'm more helping them towards, other types of planning. And
Hmm.
so that's why I love connecting with different practitioners who have their specialties, because I believe we can all help one another and be a lot more effective that way for the person that's in front of us.
Exactly, exactly. And it really is, a big team effort here, because you're working in retirement planning, and there's other people who are working in investment management, and there's
Hmm.
other people who are working like I am in kind of how to manage the money you have coming in, how to use credit. I mean, there's tax planners. The more I get into the finance world, the more I'm like, wow, I had no idea that was a subspecialty. How cool is that?
Yeah.
I ran across somebody recently on LinkedIn who her whole niche is working with people who have sudden wealth. So lottery
Hmm.
winners inherit big estates, because it's like that is a real challenge in and of itself, trying to figure out if you suddenly get this huge windfall,
Right.
how to manage that wisely. Most people really struggle with that. So yeah, it's fascinating, just the number of professionals that are out there in the under the umbrella of finance industry, and what they can bring. So yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, no, exactly. And especially as you start to meet more of these people and learn about their specialties, I just love learning about it. And I think
Yeah.
that's as as you like me, we're promoters of financial education and
Hmm.
financial literacy and empowerment and to your unlocking your inner millionaire. I mean,
Hmm.
talking about that, what do you think? I know we might have touched base on this a little bit, but what do you think is crucial for women entrepreneurs, in order to be able to grasp really a more secure and purposeful life?
Yeah, that's such a good question. You had so many good questions that you sent over ahead of this interview, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, these are such good questions." It's like really thought provoking. So I so appreciate
Of
you having
course.
me on the show, because it's just like really been an interesting thing thinking all of these great questions you had through. Yeah, I think in terms of financial security, I'll touch on that first. So, when it comes to specifically for women, when it comes to achieving financial security, I think the number one thing, just to come back to that whole thing about ladies don't talk about money,
Hmm.
we need to smash that into tiny little bits because
Hmm.
ladies do need to talk about money. Even if you share the management of your money with your spouse, or your partner, which I think is really important.
Yeah.
I think it's really important for both people in the relationship, who are whatever adults in your family are making money and managing it together. It's important to have collaborative discussions about how to manage the money and not just like have one person do it or the other person do it,
Yes.
because it's just like running a company. You wouldn't just have like one person run the whole thing. You have a board of directors. So, and in fact, that's exactly what my husband and I do. Is we kind of think about ourselves as like a mini board of directors, and we will have budget meetings at least once a month and just sit down and run through everything just the same way you would a small company. And we found that's just the most efficient thing to do, and that way everybody's appraised on exactly what's going on with the money. But I think, yeah, in terms of financial security, ladies have to get comfortable talking about money. They have to get comfortable, managing the money, learning how to invest. That's something I've just gotten into recently. And I
Hmm.
actually took a really good online course that I'll send you over the information so you can put it in your description box on your
Absolutely.
YouTube and your podcast, of a woman who's on YouTube who teaches investing specifically. She's absolutely fantastic.
Wonderful.
Her YouTube is Money with Maggie, and she's where I learned how to invest.
Yes.
So, it's really good to see people coming on and teaching in that space, but really important to just get to the point where you've got good finance skills, you're starting to invest and plan for your retirement. Learn how to manage whatever debt you have and not get into any more, unless there's like some super good reason to, and kind of work your way towards financial security that way. So that's really important, just to change that mindset around money for women.
Hmm.
I think that's super important. And then in terms of living a purposeful life, then I really feel like that is something that's not necessarily directly tied to how wealthy you are.
Yes.
Um, I think that's a tough one because you can have an incredibly purposeful life and never be rich,
Hmm.
because you just happen to work in an industry where it's just not well reimbursed. I think about teachers. I was planning to be an elementary school teacher before, life happened, and I ended up on all these different pathways. But I was planning to teach elementary school, and as an elementary school teacher, they just are so woefully underpaid. It's just
Hmm.
such
Yes.
a tragedy how poorly teachers are paid, at least here in the United States. And so you can be in a field where you're touching lives every single day. You're making incredible, incredible impact, and you have nothing in your bank account. And so I think it's hard to say from a financial perspective, if that, I just don't think you can tie the amount in your bank account to how much purpose you have. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of ikigai.
Yes. I love Ikigai.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Ikigai is like a really interesting concept. It's basically like this kind of Venn diagram with all these little
Hmm.
things that kind of help you find that cross section of, something you're passionate about, preferably something that pays at least enough to live off of, if not, slightly better, and then something that makes a difference in the world. And so you're trying to find that intersection of all those different things. So for some people, their ikigai moment is very well paid. I mean, where they're living a purposeful life. You look at Warren Buffett, he's 93 years old and he's one of the world's richest men. And he's got a net worth of $121 billion right now as of September 23. And he's very purposeful and is using all his money to help humanity by being incredibly philanthropic. So I just think it's really interesting because you can have elementary school teachers who are making nothing and have this incredibly purposeful life. You can have the world's richest people who are having purposeful lives. So I think it's kind of a very unique journey that each of us are on to find that place.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that. I completely feel the same exact way. I think with today's society, with social media, right? A lot of times purpose or living a great life means, oh, I got to be
Mhm.
wealthy. I got to
Mhm.
be insta famous or whatever it whatever it is. And to your point, I believe, teachers are woefully underpaid. I mean,
Yeah.
they are serving and looking after the next generation.
Hmm.
And I believe as adults, I heard this from Kevin Hart. He said that as adults, one of our responsibilities is to leave the world a better place for the next generation.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that resonated so much with me as far as, looking inward and what is my purpose and in general. And I think to your point, that's why I love Ikigai, because of the ideas, the
Hmm.
concepts of really turning inward and thinking what is most important to you. So, like you said, for some, it might be attaining a certain amount of wealth. For
Hmm.
others, it might be just more of a balance. And I think it's
Yeah.
important to have those discussions with, again, the right team, but also with yourself too. And I think that's
Hmm.
so important. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, yeah, you're welcome. And just to add on to that, that's something that I've actually unearthed as I've been studying Native American culture and Cherokee culture is that
Yes.
they were so in tune with legacy and with the way they left things for the next generation. And that kind of they viewed things in so much more of a generational perspective than we do in our modern Western society today.
Hmm.
And I always find that absolutely fascinating as I'm studying Native culture. We have so much that we can learn from them, and it's just sadly it's just getting lost.
Hmm.
And so it's but just to be able to kind of tap into some of that, and like you said, how can we leave the world a better place for the next generation? How can we make an impact and leave a legacy? And I think that at the end of the day is really the thing that's the key to having purpose in life, is to
Yeah.
do something that makes you really feel like I am making the world a better place. I am leaving a legacy for the next generation. And yeah, I think that's really special and just something that Native cultures were really tuned into as well.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't know that. And to
Hmm.
be honest,
Yeah.
when you were telling me that, it actually gave me goosebumps because I love legacy. Kobe
Yeah.
Bryant right behind me.
Yeah.
I painted this
Yeah.
mural, because he's my hero. And what I love
It's
about
great.
him was his idea of legacy. He didn't want to be
Hmm.
great for anyone but himself, but in doing so, he inspired so many people that didn't even know him.
Hmm.
And that was his
Hmm.
mindset, was to pass on that legacy. So I think
Yeah.
just having that, maybe even just legacy mindset, can just influence so many other things in so many
Hmm. Hmm.
positive ways. So thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that part of me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure when you were studying that just even resonated even more with what you're doing right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, really fascinating.
Oh, that is beautiful. That is beautiful. Now, we're nearing the tail end here, and I wanted to ask you, if you could give one piece of game changing advice for people to achieve financial security. We just talked about it, purposeful living. What do you think that one piece of advice would be?
Gosh, it's hard to pick just one.
Yeah,
Come
I
over
know.
to my YouTube
There's so many
channel
good
because I've
things.
got advice all. Yeah, I'm always just I'm always dishing out advice. I feel like I'm kind of like one third finance coach, one third life coach, and then like one third of me is doing this wealth mindset research that I do. So I have a lot of like life advice too on my channel. You probably won't find another finance coach who's telling you like how to shop healthy at the grocery store.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, it's probably unlikely anyway. There might be somebody else out there that's doing that, but yeah, I try to just bring a lot of value on a variety of different levels. But yeah, in terms of just advice for people and just one thing, if I had to pick one thing, I'd say really work on your mindset,
Mm-hmm.
and somewhat towards money, because I think that that's a piece of it, but also just your mindset towards life, because I feel like the battle is just really won and lost in our minds. I just talk so much about this on my channel, and I'm really interested in behavioral psychology. I'm actually looking at doing a whole study program on financial behavioral psychology
Yes.
in particular, and why we spend money the way we do, why we make the decisions that we make with it. Um, and so, but it really, really is important to get our mindset right, especially when we're talking about finance, about money. Because if we can get that right, it's going to just make everything so much easier. Because, a lot of what happens for a lot of people is they'll get stuck in what's called a lack mindset, where they'll
Uh-huh.
just have this perception that there's just not enough to go around. Resources are scarce, and
Yes.
perhaps especially if they came from a family that experienced poverty and difficulty, and if they had a difficult upbringing where there wasn't enough money, then that's obviously really rooted in a real place. I know my grandparents on both sides grew up on farms during the Depression, during the Dust
Mm.
Bowl era.
Hmm.
And so they definitely struggled with that, in ways that I could definitely see as a child growing up, of struggling with that lack mindset from having been through a time of real deprivation where there was just nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, just, nothing or very little. And so I think it's just one of those things where being able to come out of that lack mindset and move over into a place of wealth mindset. You'll also hear people call it abundance mindset, where you're opening your mind up to all the possibilities that are out there. Because I always teach this on my channel, but if you tell yourself that you can't achieve whatever it is in life that you want to achieve, or you're just never going to have access to the things you want, you'll never be rich, you're not going to be rich. Like, it won't happen
Yeah.
because, you're telling yourself, it's just not possible for me. And so then you're not going to take the action steps that you need to take to even start getting there, whether it's educating yourself, trying new things, failing, trying some more new things,
Yep.
and you just won't ever get to the point where you're even taking action if your brain is telling you, like, you're never going to have what you need. You're never going to get access to those resources. You'll always be stuck in the same place that, maybe your family or your whatever, wherever you come from, that's as good as it's going to be. Who do you think you are, trying to level up your life? I think that that's a real struggle, and not that that doesn't come from a real place. A lot of times when you hear people talk about lack mindset, it's almost like, oh gosh, they have a lack mindset. It's like, well, that came from a real place. I
Yes.
saw that with my grandparents from the Depression.
Yeah.
I remember when we were going through, my grandparents on my mom's side, when we were going through their estate after they passed away, and they just saved everything just in case they
Mm-hmm.
needed it later. Like, every last little twisty tie and every last, like, plastic container that anything ever came in, they just carefully washed it and put it away. And just, it wasn't hoarding behavior. It was just that they had been through a time where there was just, you might need it later.
Right.
And so they just kept absolutely everything. And so it was really interesting seeing that, how that kind of plays out for people. But if people are able to kind of move from perhaps a place where they really did come from a very difficult time financially, and move in their mindset, move to a place where they're like, it's okay for me to be rich. Maybe I'm the first person in my family who's been wealthy. That's okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of narratives, unfortunately, around leveling up your life, where people will say to you, oh, who do you think you are?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why
Yes.
isn't what we've always had good enough for you? Why do you want more for yourself? And I don't know if women go through that more than men, but it's certainly something I've heard other women talk about as they've been leveling themselves up financially. And so I think just really working on that mindset is really, really key. And that's the place to start, because you can learn all the good finance skills in the world, but if you don't have your mindset around money right, with that wealth mindset and being willing to be open to all the possibilities that are out there, you just won't be able to reach your full wealth potential. And I really believe that if we are able to reach our full wealth potential in whatever industry we're working in, we can make the biggest difference in the world. And it just makes the logistics of our life smoother too, because poverty is just very difficult.
Yes.
So if we're able to have enough money to just make the logistics of our day-to-day life run smoothly, do all the retirement planning like what you're working with people on, be invested, do all these different things, be able to be philanthropic and help people in our community. We just have more to work with that way. So just that mindset is really key.
Yeah, it is definitely key. And what would you say is if there is something that takes someone from that lack mindset to maybe that abundance mindset? Is there something that you think maybe that people can, I don't know, work on to try to help them transition? Because I agree with you, especially when it comes to money and growing up with money. That influences a lot as far as how we deal with money as adults. Studying behavioral finance, one thing that you were talking about earlier is that when you come into wealth, people might start looking at you differently and treating you differently and saying, "Oh, who
Mhm.
are you?"
Mhm.
And a lot of studies show that this is kind of that tribal mentality that we grew up,
Yeah.
with our ancestors.
Mhm.
When we lived as tribes, it was always the
Mhm.
share mentality. You don't branch off from your tribe. You always
Mhm.
come back to that tribe. So
Mhm.
subconsciously, that very act of saying, "Oh, who do you think you are?" kind of messes up that person who's trying to strive for more. And sometimes where it unfortunately brings them back down. You see that a lot with athletes, and like you were talking
Yeah.
about people that come into sudden money.
Mhm.
Just that just those little things that people are not aware of. So I guess, for you, as you're going through and working with people and helping them become aware of this lack mindset that they might have and shifting them into that abundance mindset, what do you think is something that is important for them to maybe notice and be aware of to help them get towards that path?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked. That's what my first book is going to be
Oh,
about. So I'm gonna have a
awesome.
whole book about
Well, you don't have to
that.
disclose
Yeah.
anything then, but no, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to share here as well, but that's actually what I'm working on right now because I noticed that there wasn't a book on the market about that anywhere. The most work that I've seen really done on that and the things that have influenced me have probably been from Marissa Peer. So
Okay.
she's on YouTube and she has a lot of work on mindset that she does. Jacqueline Hurst has done a lot of work on mindset. She has a really good book out. I'll send you all these links so you can put them in the
Awesome.
description for your audience.
Thank you.
Um, they've done some really, really good work on mindset and how to move your mindset. Like a lot of people who are in the therapy space have done a lot of work on that because it really is like psychology at the
Yes.
end of the day when you're looking at moving from a lack mindset to a wealth or an abundance mindset. But really, the first place to start, I would say, is just look and see where you are right now and
Mm-hmm.
where that came from. Like you were saying, did it come from your family of origin? Was it even handed down, perhaps, if you had grandparents who, like mine, grew up during the Depression, and so it was just kind of handed down that, like, there's never going to be enough. Like, even though we have enough today, but there's, coming from a place where there wasn't enough. Maybe generations back, those family money narratives can be pretty persistent and stick around.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I think that, just that kind of work on psychology and definitely check out Marissa Peer's channel in particular, because I feel like she's done probably the best work to date so far on how to move your mindset to a place where it's not sabotaging you. And
Mm-hmm.
also, I think a lot of it too comes down to confidence
Yeah.
around money and confidence that you are, well, it's somewhat confidence. Again, it's all, I feel like a therapist when I start talking about this, and I'm not a therapist by any means, but, I feel like a lot of it is self confidence, a lot of it is self worth. And feeling like you're a valuable, obviously, we're all valuable people,
Yeah.
but being willing to say, I'm a valuable person, and it's okay for me to have kind of like the physical expression of that value in my life in terms of my net worth or my income.
Yes.
I particularly, when it comes to women, and particularly women business owners, I chronically see them underpricing their services. It's something
Mm,
that I just see all the time. It's a struggle for just entrepreneurs in general, but especially for women. We talk about kind of that glass ceiling
yeah.
on the income level for women who are just pretty chronically underpaid in the same industry as men, but women are going to have lower salaries just historically. But then when you get into entrepreneurship, I see a lot of women who just don't charge enough for their services, and they're putting their heart and their soul into their business. And it's like, charge more,
Yeah.
And I always feel like kind of funny because I'm like, probably everyone else is complaining your stuff is too expensive, but I'm here like, you should charge more. Um,
Yeah.
so I feel like just being able to kind of really work on self-esteem, self-confidence, and valuing yourself as a person, and then being willing to kind of put that value out there into the world in the sense of, again, and confidence is something that takes a lot of work and intentional work to develop. And that's something I'd really refer people to a good therapist for. Particularly cognitive behavioral therapy is really
Hmm.
good if you struggle with low self-esteem, because I feel like that's another thing that really can keep people stuck in a lack mindset is low self-esteem.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah.
Because maybe they feel like, well, I don't feel comfortable asking for that raise at work, or I don't feel comfortable charging what my services might be worth if it's my own business. And so being able, and that's a lifelong process. It's something I'm really working on myself and cultivating myself. And YouTube is full of great educational content about how to build your self-confidence and self-esteem. By the way, I've found so many good resources there too. But yeah, I think that's, really, and if people want to get information about my book when it comes out, they can just come over to my website, which is just
Yes.
sarahdens.com. And they can sign up for my newsletter, get my updates. And then when my new book comes out, they can go and buy that because that'll be on Amazon hopefully next year.
Oh, awesome.
But that's something that I'm really diving into as well as what does it take to move yourself into that mindset that's not going to sabotage you, not going to
Hmm.
hold you back, and is going to help you feel, courageous and be able to go out there and really take the action that you need to take in your life, no matter where you're coming from, what the people who are currently in your life are saying about it, how
Hmm.
jealous people are. Unfortunately, jealousy can be another thing that can be kind of sabotaging if you're leveling up, because people around you might feel, upset that you're doing better and not want to see that happen. We're just kind of that way sometimes as humans. So yeah, um, that's my thoughts on that though.
Beautiful. Well, I'm excited, Sarah, to look. I look forward to the book. So you definitely
Thank
have to let me
you.
know when there's a pre-order available. So
Yes, I will.
I'm looking forward to it. So you said sometime next year, we can look forward to that.
Yes, I'm
Wonderful.
just getting with my
There we
editor
go.
next week. And so we're getting the ball rolling on publications. So yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we're almost here at the end, so I just want to finish up here with the last couple questions. So, talking about earlier, you mentioned it's really a lifelong process, right? That we're working on, and if we were to fast forward, 5, 10 years away, what do you envision, the financial landscape to look like for people, especially for women?
Yeah, that's such a good question, and oh my goodness, that's had me thinking too. Like, this has been such a fun interview because I've had all your questions kind of going in my mind, and I'm like, maybe I should answer it this way. I'm like, well, no, that one would be actually a much better answer. Like, and then I'm like, well, okay, this is going to be a 4-hour podcast by the
Yeah.
time we're done. I hope his audience doesn't mind. We're going to be one
Yeah,
of those
we're gonna be
podcasts,
competing with Joe Rogan pretty soon.
Yeah, I know, and it's so funny of just all day long. I mean, with the future, though, there's a great Ray Dalio quote that I absolutely love. And if
Yes.
people aren't familiar with Ray Dalio, he's one of the world's most successful hedge fund managers and founded Bridgewater. And he's got a great book called Principles that I'd highly recommend everybody read. It's a little bit technical in places,
Yeah.
but Principles is just absolutely fantastic book. And Ray has actually done a lot of work on, much better than my thoughts, on what the world is going to look like in the future. So if you check out his books, his YouTube stuff that he's done, he's started to give a lot of interviews now that he's stepped down a little bit from his involvement at Bridgewater. So he's done some really interesting interviews. I feel like with his interest in macroeconomic theory, he's probably got the best feel of anybody. Like if anybody had a crystal ball, it would probably be Ray Dalio. But even him, he's got this great quote that he says, "He who lives by the crystal ball will eat a lot of broken glass." So, just to say that, we can't predict the future, and often it'll just turn out to be totally different than what we're thinking, right?
Yes.
Um, so yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I think going forward, we have a couple of interesting challenges. One of them is, financial challenges. One of them for women in particular, and you and I talked about this when we were kind of doing our chat last week about this interview, is just that women are living longer than men. And
Hmm.
what's really interesting is that, so they've got to do a lot more retirement planning and be really intentional about how do I not run out of money. I mean, you work with your clients on this all day long. Um, but making sure that you've got resources for yourself in retirement. So I think that
Yeah.
that's one piece of it. Then there's also longevity technology.
Yeah.
So, in 25 years, men might be just living just as long as women. So we
Yeah,
could be
you're right.
seeing, which for your sake, I hope so. So we could see really that changing as well. Where, with longevity science right now, they're estimating that people could live up to 120 years or longer
That's
in
right.
good
I saw
health.
that. Yeah. That's crazy to think.
So that totally changes retirement planning, I'm sure, right there when you start to look at that, because 65 is only halfway there.
Yeah.
Instead of being, into your golden years, you're only halfway there. So
Oh,
that's
yeah.
going to be really, really interesting to see how that shapes things. Um, and then inflation obviously has been shaping things as well. Inflation's definitely been at 40-year highs lately.
Hmm.
And so that's been causing a lot of, issues for people. So that'll be interesting to see where that goes as well. I mean, inflation obviously doesn't stay high forever. But acutely, that's causing a lot of trouble for people as they're trying to save and invest in particular. I was just doing some research for a show that I'm going to be filming later today, and Bankrate did a survey earlier this year. They said that 22% of American adults have nothing in savings.
Wow. Yes.
And that goes
Yes.
up even higher when you get to Gen Z. It's
Hmm.
31% of Gen Z has no savings, just because, when typically younger generations just haven't had the time to accumulate wealth and build wealth. And so that's pretty typical. But, at the same time, I think that's also reflecting the economic and financial challenges we've had since 2020. So, yeah, we're living in some interesting times. So I don't know how that's all going to play out for the future. But yeah, if anybody really is interested in like prognosticating on that one, go check out Ray Dalio's work, because I feel like if anybody's going to be right, I always pay really close attention to what he says, because I feel like he kind of has he's just got a very interesting perspective as a forecaster for all things financial.
No, exactly. I agree. I love his book Principles, and even I don't know if
Yeah.
you've ever used his app, but every day I get a notification from Principles, just some of his favorite quotes, different sayings,
Yeah.
and yeah, he just has this kind of mindset from the macro level to see a lot of things, and
Mhm.
obviously, I think that's attributed a lot to his success over his
Yeah.
career and with his company. But I love that quote. With
Yeah.
no one has a crystal ball. If you do, you're gonna eat glass. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's a lot of times people will come to advisors and say, "What do you think about how the markets are gonna do?" And no one has a
Mm.
crystal ball. I always tell them, no
Mhm.
one has a crystal ball, but what's most important is being aware of your own situation, and are you going to be
Right.
prepared to weather different storms? And I think that's just to what we've been talking about this whole series, this whole episode is just
Mhm.
mindset is so important, and just having
Yeah.
that right mindset and being aware of what we should pay attention to are things that we can
Mhm.
control, and
Mhm.
be educated about the things that we can't control, but don't let those
Mhm.
things consume us.
That's exactly, I'm gonna steal that line from a YouTube video later today, because that's exactly what I was thinking, in terms of all the stuff that's going on. You couldn't have put it better. That's exactly what I was thinking, is just try to be as prepared as we can.
Hmm.
I feel like in our industry, we're just, trying to help people expect the best and be prepared for the worst. So, and,
Yeah.
and I feel like a lot of what I do on my channel is trying to bring some optimism to the situation that people are in right now. Even when I'm talking about difficult situations, like what do you do if you have no savings? What do you
Hmm.
do if you're one of these 22% of Americans that has no savings at all? I mean, that's a very stressful situation to be in.
Yeah.
And I don't think Americans are worse savers today than they used to be. It's very down to the economy and inflation and all of these different economic hardships people have been
Absolutely.
through the last couple of years, but just trying to bring some reassurance to, I think finance is already something people feel very intimidated by. And then, these days it's just downright scary. So just trying
Hmm.
to bring some optimism and encouragement and positivity to that space is also my goal, where people can come and talk about something that is stressful, but feel hopefully a little bit better when they're done watching my videos, and feel a little bit reassured that, okay, I've got 3 things that Sarah said I can try, that maybe this will help, or maybe one of these things, I'll
Yeah.
just try one thing. I just, I'm reading James Clear's Atomic Habits right now, and that's another book I can't recommend highly enough. Atomic Habits, James Clear, fantastic,
That's a good book.
fantastic book. But he said, as you're like leveling up, whether it's your finances, like we're talking about, or anything else, just try to get 1% better at a time. Don't
Yes.
focus on these huge quantum leaps. Just look at getting like 1% better. So, my goal whenever I get on YouTube is to just try to make people's lives 1% better. Just
Yeah.
if I can make one person's life 1% better, that's all I care about. So,
Yeah. I love that. That is so powerful. I mean, that's just, I think, a great way to look at things again, because we
mhm.
live in a world where everything is so accelerated, right?
Yeah,
Technology, information, everything's so accelerated. So it's unfortunately, it's a more of I want it now type of thing.
yeah.
And just that 1% is so powerful because it
Hmm.
adds up over time.
Hmm.
And so just adopting that mindset, I agree, is huge. So I'm looking forward to,
Hmm.
getting on your channel and seeing you talk about that more.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I just started on YouTube in May, so it's very new to me. So I'm really, really loving it, though. It's such a great educational platform. When I'm not
Yes, yes.
creating content, I'm watching other people's. I'm watching yours or other people in that I want to learn from. It's just such a absolutely. It's my favorite space there on YouTube.
Yes.
Because I think, gosh, what if I'd had this in my 20s? Wouldn't that have made life easier?
I
I think
know.
a lot of people learn either personal finance or, in your case, retirement planning and stuff. They learn it the hard way.
Hmm.
They learn it the hard way, and we're here to make their lives easier. So I think that's really fun to be able to do that and say, hey, you don't have to learn this by trial and error. Here's some things that will make this your path a little smoother.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. I agree. I agree. Well, Sarah, last couple questions here. Is there any question that, you maybe wish we had delved into? And if so,
Uh, such
how would you answer that?
It's such a good one. I know you had so many good questions. I was like, oh my gosh, like this was like a real mental workout getting through the
That's the whole
questions on
point.
there.
It's awareness.
Got me thinking. It's really good. Any questions that you might have asked me
Or didn't ask. I didn't
or
ask
didn't ask?
that you think would be
Yeah. I mean,
important.
I think one thing that's really kind of crucial that we didn't touch on is when people are just starting out in finance and when they're just learning and just getting started.
Hmm.
That is, like, I think, the really important time to be able to explain things in a way that's really approachable. And
Yeah.
so for me, I think that that's something that you do really well on your channel,
Thank you.
and I'm definitely trying to do on mine, is just explain things and teach things in a way that's approachable for people that they can really connect with, relate to. Because I know in the past, a lot of times financial advisors just seemed so remote. And so, like, it was sort of like, it was all in Latin, and you
Right.
had to
Yeah,
have the
exactly.
priest to interpret it for you because you couldn't read the Bible yourself. And now, because of YouTube, people can read the financial Bible themselves. So I think it's also one of those things of being able to present things in a way that people can really relate to and connect with, and that people have access to this stuff themselves. In a way, my real goal, and I guess, like, here's the question that you could have asked me, right, is like, what's your goal with your business?
Yeah.
My goal with my business is I don't want my students to need me anymore. I want them to think, oh, Sarah Edens was my finance coach.
Yeah.
And I want them to get so good that they don't need me anymore, because that's really my goal. I don't want people to be needing to come back to me year after year after year and have me do things for them, because personal finance is something anyone can learn.
Hmm.
I did not come from a finance background. I came from a liberal arts background, planning to be an elementary school teacher, and then life happened, and so then I ended up in finance. But I didn't come from a finance background at all. I had no finance background and no business background, nothing like that. And I'm running my own business in finance now. So I think that it's just one of those things where anybody can learn personal finance. It's not as intimidating as it seems. And I really want to just be able to equip people, whether it's through my books, my YouTube platform, my online course that I'm going to be rolling out next year in beginner personal finance, just to be able to give people resources and tools so that they can walk away and say, I have total confidence that I can manage my money. I don't need Sarah anymore because she's
Uh,
given me all these great tools and resources, and I might check back in with her once in a while. but I've been through her program and I am completely equipped to do this on my own. Because I think as adults, that's really empowering to say, I don't need anybody's help in this area because I have learned the skills and I can do it myself.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really, really key too. Not that we don't keep learning and growing and reaching out for help when we need it, but I don't want people to feel like money is something that happens to them. I, I want them to feel like they are in control of their money and it's
Ah.
not just this black box. Because when I hear women say that money is a black box to them, it kind of breaks my heart
Mhm.
because I'm like, it only is that way because you haven't learned yet all the skills that you need to know. And that's what I'm here for. So
Oh, I love that, Sarah. I love that. Just
thanks.
that right there. What you said. I mean, the goal is to teach people enough to where they don't need you. I think that is just an amazing thing to be able to, powerful thing to be able to say, because again, at the
Yeah.
end of the day, you're empowering people to really take control of their personal
Right.
finance. Like you said, personal finance, it can be learned, but having someone like you to help start on that journey with them and then get them to a
Hmm.
path where they can feel confident enough is really, yeah, the end goal. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it was something that I was really inspired by with the work that Jacqueline Hurst is doing in life coaching. Eventually, I may get a life coaching certificate too. I'm always thinking about, oh, I could do some more training. I'm always learning. I just finished up an internship over the summer
There you
with
go.
a certified financial planner. So, you know, I'm just constantly learning so that I can bring more value to my students and to my audience on YouTube. But yeah, she really has an interesting perspective where she works with people, puts them through a course, and then she's like, I want them to then be able to go out and do this on their own so that it's
Mhm.
not building this relationship where it's like they've been working with you for decades and maybe they're not doing that much better than they were when they started. It's like, no, I want people to work with me because people need the tools today. You
Mhm.
know, they need the tools now. They need the tools yesterday to
Mhm.
be able to deal with stressful financial situations, level up their life, figure out how to make more money, figure out how to grow their money with investing. You know, life's moving at such a fast pace that people need those tools now. So I want to just make things really accessible for people in a way that's easy to understand. And then that way they can just take it and immediately apply it to their life. I mean, in fact, when I roll out my course next year, it's not even going to have any tests, any quizzes, any exams. Because personally, I don't feel like those are a very good indicator of whether people understand content.
Yeah.
And secondly, I feel like the main place that we demonstrate how much we've learned is on the stage of life. If
Yeah.
we can take what we learn here on YouTube or on podcasts or other places and then just roll it out and use it in our life, like that's when I'll feel like I've done my job, is when my students are out there, you know, crushing it in the world. So,
Absolutely. And I sense a lot of that is from your educator background.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. No,
definitely.
that's beautiful. That is beautiful. Well, most important, Sarah, how can people get a hold of you? All your different channels. Can you let us know how we can find you?
Yes, absolutely. So the best place is my website. It's just sarahedens.com. And that has links to my YouTube channel. It's got links to Instagram. I post on LinkedIn pretty frequently. I've got my blog over on my website. I've got my blog in Spanish, which has been a new fun challenge for me. I
Awesome.
majored also in Spanish in college. And thanks to Google Translate, I can get my blog posts translated faster than if I sat there and had to do it myself. So that's been fun. I just want to make my content available to as many people as I can. Obviously, here on YouTube, you can access over 100 different languages in the subtitles, which is nice. So just being able to make that really, really accessible. And then if they go to my contact page on my website, that's where they can fill out an application to work with me as a student, one-to-one coaching, get on the wait list for my upcoming course, and find out about new book releases. So my website's definitely the my online home and the place that they can find me there.
Oh, awesome. Well, I will definitely be collecting all of that information from you, Sarah, and then putting that for everyone who's listening on the show notes so that you guys can find Sarah and connect with her. And so, Sarah, because I just want to say thank you so much for spending your time with me. I truly love doing these things because I'm learning from your mindset. And I think that's so important for us to be able to just continue learning and learning from one another, and so that we can keep serving people in the very highest way. So thank you again so much, Sarah, for being on the Witty Wallet.
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Witty Wallet. My name is Christopher Fu, and we'll be back soon. Thank you.
Securities offered through Kestra Investment Services, LLC, member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Kestra Private Wealth Services, LLC, an affiliate of Kestra is. Navin Bridge Capital and Kestra Investment Services are not affiliated. Kestra is and Kestras do not provide tax or legal advice. The opinions expressed in this commentary are those of the author and may not necessarily reflect those held by Kestra Investment Services, LLC or Kestra Advisory Services, LLC. This is for general information only and is not intended to provide specific investment advice or recommendations for any individual. It is suggested that you consult your financial professional, attorney, or tax advisor with regard to your individual situation. Comments concerning the past performance are not intended to be forward-looking and should not be viewed as an indication of future results.